Hello, friends. First, a small aside today. I used to teach youth ministry courses at Geneva College some years ago, and one of the courses focused on how social changes were making it far more difficult to evangelize young people than it used to be. We were discovering that prevailing social attitudes in a simple agrarian society had been compatible with the Christian gospel and supported the growth of young people in these Christian values. However, presently, we're in the midst of a post-industrial social upheaval. Large changes in social attitudes dictate that now Christians must defy prevailing social norms to follow Christ authentically. There is precious little in the popular culture that would support the Christian view. In the 1930s, the full impact of the Industrial Revolution was being felt in urban America. Several prestigious authors wrote futuristic novels about what might be in store if these dehumanizing changes continued. George Orwell wrote 1984, a chilling glimpse into a repressive totalitarian society that he saw on the horizon. And Aldous Huxley wrote Brave New World, which pictured a world of brainwashed test tube people for whom sex was only a recreational activity and pleasurable diversion was life's highest goal. No thinking required. Neil Postman compared these two visions of the future in an introduction to his book called Amusing Ourselves to Death, and it went like this. Orwell warns that we will be overcome by an externally imposed oppression. Huxley saw that no big brother is required to deprive people of their autonomy, maturity, and history. They will grow to love their oppression and to adore the technologies that undo their ability to think. Orwell feared those who would ban books. Huxley feared that there would be no one left who wanted to read a book. Orwell feared that we would be deprived of information, and Huxley feared that there would be so much information that we would be drowned in a sea of passivity. Orwell feared that the truth would be concealed from us. Huxley feared that the truth would be irrelevant. Orwell feared that we would become a captive culture. Huxley feared that we would become a trivial culture, preoccupied with sex, drugs, and rock and roll, never thinking or wanting to go any deeper than that. Orwell feared that what we hate would ruin us. Huxley feared that what we love would ruin us. Huxley remarked that the ever-vigilant civil libertarians who are ever on the alert for tyranny failed to recognize the most complete tyranny, the preoccupation with self. Huxley was right about that. I think the magnitude of social change in the last 70 years can be clearly seen when we consider cultural attitudes about self-denial. In the world in which I grew up only 50 years ago, it was the centerpiece of character. It was expected of you, for the good of those with whom you lived and for those yet to come. The ability to deny oneself and to delay gratification was the measure of maturity and responsibility. Can we all agree that today the idea of self-denial is not held in high esteem by the majority of Americans? The whole concept is rather laughable. He or she is considered a fool who endures any kind of pain or inconvenience when it is avoidable. We have been taught to put ourselves first, to look out for number one, to pull our own strings. Our comfort is paramount, our choices ever mounting, our threshold of expectation unthinkably high. Still, we continue to simmer in self-indulgence highly indignant when our demands are not met. We are unabashed self-promoters and unashamed. Unashamed. That's the most telling part. Not knowing enough about self-denial to be embarrassed. This self-absorption is bad news for those of us concerned about passing on the gospel of Jesus Christ. This gospel demands self-denial on every other page. Jesus promotes this peculiar notion that in dying to ourselves, we find ourselves, and in giving up our lives, we find them. You can tell people this, but if it never finds a mirror in the world, it's not likely to be understood by a young person. The gospel is hard and narrow the way that leads to salvation, but the world looks for the broad, easy path. Churches who seek to minimize this conflict by preaching a culturally acceptable Jesus who bends to accommodate a wayward society, they do us no favors. Perseverance, humility, endurance, privation, self-giving, self-denial, not the stuff of our brave new world, but absolutely necessary for the true disciple of Christ. We are called to imitate Christ's emptying of self. He who did not cling to his privileges as God, but stripped himself of every advantage by consenting to be a slave by nature and being born a man and plainly seen as a human being, humbled himself by living a life of utter obedience to the point of death. And the death he died was the death of a common criminal. That's from Philippians 2:5-9. I remember writing the word joy at the top of all of my papers at St. Coleman's Elementary School. It meant Jesus, others, yourself, joy. These are the people we should serve, in that order. That's how we find joy. It was easily taught then, but I fear some resistance now. I am distraught about this situation in our world. How will we ever regain our focus? And now I've run out of time and space before I got to talk about the need for Lent. Well, maybe next year. Have a great day.